yeses out of a room of 100 and someone. Yes, thumbs up everyone. Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So up to our first speaker, a special welcome. I know he's heading off to a cabinet meeting before long, so a special welcome to him. And also our team from Volvo, the extensive Volvo team are with us, and they'll be filtering in and out as the day unfolds. We have a few more guests who will arrive just a little bit later. But our first speaker, he's to do our keynote address, is the Minister of Economic Opportunities in the Western Cape. And I think you can appreciate with a conference like this, it is filled with a possibility of all sorts of economic opportunities. So I'm going to ask you please put your hands together as we welcome the relevant Minister, Alan Windy.
Good morning, everybody. It's really, really good to be here today. I presume that you're all happy that the venue was changed, right? Because at the other venue we would have been cooking already. This is not good news for our water levels, but anyway. Good morning. Thank you very much for all being here today. Thank you that we can be here at an event like this to talk about events. And so the first thing I wrote on my piece of paper, I said that events are big business and big for business. So that basically talks to you as event organizers, event owners, event originators, those entrepreneurs that took chances with events. But of course, events are also things that happen through committees and fundraising organizations. Events evolve from all different avenues and levels of society. And some events really get traction and legs and become major events. And some events just tick along, and I think people are just happy that those events do what they do. I remember last year looking at the number of events that took place in the city of Cape Town alone, and there was in excess of 1,500 events that year. So events are happening all the time, and when I was thinking about what I was going to say to you today, I started thinking about events. Where do events start? And what's the oldest event in the world that's still continuing today? And I presume that's the Olympics. But of course, we also think about those big global events like World Cups, dare I say Rugby World Cups, or of course the Soccer World Cup, something that we all as South Africans are seriously proud of, pulling off that amazing event. We've held a number of great World Cups in our region for various sporting events. I also think about an event that in 1903 was started by a newspaper. And this event started in 1903. It's become a globally recognized world platform. And it's probably the biggest tourism marketing event in the world. And it's the Tour de France. And every single year, thousands of people watch this event, but get told about all these villages and towns and what happens around Europe as this event unfolds and takes place. It's become a massive tourism marketing event. If I think about local events, I think about an event 41 years ago where people decided to protest against the city of Cape Town and their road laws, talking about cycling on our roads. And that has now become a major event, and not just a major event for the city of Cape Town, but a major global event, recognized globally as one of the, or as the leading timed cycle race in the world. That started as a protest. And of course, that also started with a various range of names, and now has become branded as the Cape Town Cycle Tour. So you're finding that cities associating their names with events, it's all about branding and finding the value in the brand that that event brings along, let alone the monetary value, and I'll talk about that just now. 33 years ago, I remember sitting at our own family dining room table where the local Knysna Business Chamber led by someone called Dick Ginsburg, spoke about the suicide months, and we've got to do something about getting some kind of business happening in Knysna, and that's how the Knysna Oyster Festival began. By business saying we need to do something, let's create some event that attracts people to a region. 25 years ago, an entrepreneur started an event in this city. In the province, we engaged with a number of the big events on a platform, and I remember I first spoke about the Cape Town Cycle Tour, and I did see Dave Velez here wearing a normal shirt for today. Thank you for that. He normally wears very loud shirts, and he's a bit normal, I suppose, coming out into the city. But an event organizer pitched an idea to him, and he said it wouldn't work. And I remember him apologizing to this event organizer about 2 years ago to say, I'm sorry that I said that this event wouldn't work. And that today is the Absa Cape Epic, which is now owned not only by a local company, but an international company, and it's now a global brand and is rolling out similar events across the world. So events have different reasons for starting. Events bring huge amounts of income into our towns, into our cities. As I said, mean big things as brand ambassadors for our towns and our cities and our country and our region. They are things that can be a charity event for a school that helps us change an education outcome in some far distant area of the province. They also could be an event in another province that has huge impact on our province. And you know, for that, I think of Africa Burn, where we have people flying in here in their jets. It happens in a neighboring province, but huge amounts of money are spent in this province enabling that event to take place in a neighboring province. I think about the value in monetary terms, and I don't think we've got it right yet. That's something that I know that we should be working on a lot more. We have already started finding one kind of base platform for measuring the impact of our events. Some of us use various different universities to measure impacts on events. For us as government, we're always interested in, obviously, the jobs that come out of an event, and we're interested in the economic impact. And a number of these bigger events that we've spoken about, whether they be the Cape Town Cycle Tour, the Epic, this Volvo Ocean Race that's happening right here, you all look at numbers for the city in the region of 500, 600 million rand is what that event is worth to a city. And of course, then we look at these events that happen in our towns across this province, maybe not in the 500 million rand bracket, but in the 50 and 100 million rand bracket for some of the bigger events, are really sizable income and energy, income and revenue generators for those towns and those regions. And I think that's the reason that government is important in sitting in the room. I know that so often people look at government and think, well, it's about the funding. And if I started off by saying there's 1,500 events, government can't seed fund every single one of those. And we also are not able to generally keep funding the same events over and over again. I'll talk a little bit about budding events and brewing events, and we would very much like to seed events, get them going, but hopefully they get their own energy, their own legs, and able to continue, that we could actually take what funding we have to try and seed and fund new events that help us with this economic platform that events give us. But events have become much bigger and much more than just that. So right now, if we, I spoke about these events that started so many years ago. In 1973, a yacht race called the Whitbread Ocean Race started, funded by the Whitbread Brewery. And of course, there again, business seeing opportunity in funding something, giving them some brand recognition, but also starting something that becomes something bigger and better and bolder over time. And here we are so many years later, now known as the Volvo Ocean Race. And this is a race that starts in Spain, ends in Holland, and it's an ocean yacht race. But since that race has got here, I was part of a business delegation that welcomed some high-level politicians and business people from The Hague and from Holland. And at workshop 17, we started off with water discussions because it's a pertinent issue for us right here in our region. So on the back of a race, a yacht race, suddenly there are business gatherings. This event that we're having today is on the back of this very same yacht race. And of course, so it's how events have looked at how they leverage not only the event itself, but other opportunities linked to those events, and how other business people come along and find opportunities linked to those events. So often you will see events happen with conferencing and other business activities that happen around it. So every single year, it's no surprise that when the Jazz Festival is happening in Cape Town, you get calls from across the world to say, are you available for a meeting either a few days before or a few days after the Jazz Festival, because that creates the reason to come here. And then people latch onto it, and the next thing you have formal business conferencing, you have formal event gatherings like today, which are attached to events themselves. But of course, this one being unique because we are an event attached to an event talking about events. And of course, those events themselves also build those platforms. So I started off talking about the cycle tour. If you think about the expo that takes place before the cycle tour, another business opportunity of growing the economy, becoming a very big expo. If you think about the event itself and how businesses look at creating the hospitality side around those events, because it's about recognizing their own clients attached to that kind of event. And so whether it's a hospitality tent that is funded by a business inviting their top clients linked to that event, or even if I think about the Absa Cape Epic, where they even have a cycling event attached to their main event, where they invite their top clients who actually like riding bikes, and they ride alongside, called the Day Trippers. And so they've created sub-events, but they find business and brand value in those sub-events, which again become big business in themselves. I then thought that I should perhaps talk a little bit about our crisis at the moment, water. I notice we've all got a glass bottle on the table in front of each one of us. It doesn't have any water in it. We're saving water there, I suppose, but what we're also doing is we're getting other messages out around this. Here's a glass bottle, but also giving a very, very strong message around how we move from plastic to glass. We need to save our oceans, and linking that again to the Volvo Ocean Race, who are very, very committed to cleaning up our oceans. Right here in Cape Town and in the rest of the province, we've got a major problem, as Aidan said in the beginning, our water issue. And so I've already said that linked to the Volvo Ocean Race, a water business delegation happened to be here at the same time and engaged in the region on water itself. The event itself, and I think that's probably something that's going to be spoken about today, how does the event itself deal with water in this, during this event? And I know that, I'm sure that you'll talk about it, what they've done about making sure that they are water resilient, water wise, water conscious as an event themselves. Yesterday I got a phone call from an event that's taking place in the City Hall in February. It's a coffee event where it's going to celebrate coffee, and I think all our local coffee makers are involved in that event, and the organizer of the event said, please can we talk about how do we get sustainable water source and a renewable water source that can provide the water for that conference. And so this is the kind of thing that's going to be spoken about all of your events, because water is a big issue for us, but then it becomes something that is a thread within your event, and at the same time helps us with getting the message across, makes your event more resilient, and is a really good message to put out to your participants or your clients, and so it really helps us with developing a more resilient society and ecosystem here in the southern tip of Africa. I wanted to also talk about two more things. The first being organic events. And this is a big issue for us as government, and it'll lead me into my second point. But the first one is organic events, and these are events that are perhaps not in the room today. I don't know, maybe they are, but I somehow think that they might not be, because organic events are not where one individual sets aside to set up an event that's going to grow, have an income base from fees, sponsorships pulled into it. It is not designed in that way. And I think of two that come to mind. One is First Thursdays, and the other one is Moonlight Mass. And very interesting, because as these events start to gain traction, then governments start to behave differently. Some of them start to put up barriers, put cost to entries. So for example, if I use the Moonlight Mass as an example, here was an organic event that a few people started on social media, and it started to gain traction. And the next thing, there were 5, 7, 8, 9,000 people getting on a bicycle, riding around the city at full moon. Now suddenly it becomes an issue, because who registers, who licenses, who applies to the city for the ability to hold this event, who takes responsibility for this event? It becomes quite complex. And you can understand from a government's point of view, imagine if there were a couple of thousand people in this event taking a place in your city, and a truck or a bus comes around the corner and mows down 50 people. The first person who everyone's going to look at is the mayor. And the mayor's going to say, who gave permission for this event? And so there's going to be a big fight. So obviously the city officials are saying we need to protect the city. And so it becomes this space where it is very difficult. And I remember involving myself as that event was growing. I went down to the city, and it's about who stands surety. Where's the individual? But who applies? Who fills out those long documents in order to get traffic and ambulance and whatever else support you need to make sure this event takes place? And if no one is taking the lead, because there's no fee paid, it's a free event, people just come along. So there's no money to pay down the deposit and to actually secure those traffic officials, etc. And it is a conundrum. It's something that we need to speak about. But I think that is why it's important that these kind of platforms are put in place, so that event organizers, civil society, government can sit around and have these kind of discussions. That we can make sure that our events are brand building, are economically positive, are planet positive, are making a difference in the everyday lives of people in this region, but also are businesses, economic job generators. And I think that brings me to my last point, which is those long forms or red tape. And I know that tomorrow is First Thursdays again, and my office is open on a First Thursday. And I said to my team about a month ago, I said, you know, it would be quite nice for this First Thursday to close Long Street around my office, and let's allow an open street kind of festival atmosphere, much like we remember during the World Cup. And then I got the documentation and the process that I had to go through to actually make that happen. Pretty rigorous. And I mean, that is already one round of red tape into action to say we need to refine this. It is still hectic. I had a meeting with Lance Krailing yesterday from the city and said to him, this pile of documents, it is not very easy if you wanted to get something like this done. And so that, my last point is about red tape. And of course, when you read through the documents, you understand the complexity of someone in a street deciding that what we're going to do is we're going to close the street. Let's invite some guys in here. We'll have some shishinyama on the street. We'll you know, create a bit of a festive season, get the tourism season kicked off in a nice way. But then when you go through those documents, you really do understand. You know, have you consulted the neighboring businesses? Because what I might think is a great idea, closing up the street, business number 2 down the road might think it's a shocking idea because it's going to close down their business, or something's going to change. Have we consulted with those that are going to be affected? What about the traffic congestion? So there are a lot of relevant questions that one needs to ask. But this red tape challenge is something that I'm going to put to this discussion, that we need to find ways together to solve these solutions, find solutions for this kind of red tape issue. I strongly believe in those businesses, organizations, events that repeat every year or every month the same event. Surely you should fill in that documentation once. If everything ran according to plan, the police weren't called, there weren't ambulances all around your event, etc., and negative press, that next month or next year it becomes a much easier process. Because as an organizer, you are responsible, you are doing the right thing, you are doing what we want. You are creating economic growth, you are investing, you are creating jobs, you are enabling an economy. Then surely from government we should be saying, all right, fine, how do we make it easier for you? Dare I even say it, that as government we even fill out those documents for you ahead of time, send you those documents and say, we've already filled them out, we see your events taking place next year in July. Are they all filled out correctly? Has anything else changed? Please let us know. I think we should try for that, right? One or two have had red tape issues, I can hear. So I think that's sufficient for me in opening this event. We need to continue this discussion. We need to make sure that those jewels in the crown, those events that we are also proud of, continue to grow, continue to be those brand ambassadors for our region. And whatever we need to do to help you in supporting that, we need to be there for you. We need to also be able to incubate and help those small new events come up, because that is also how we are going to be known as this events capital, this region that events take place easily and are so good for our economy and our jobs. We need to be able to use and leverage the existing events and also global events. So how do we leverage those international spaces that we all go to, our various business conferencing destinations that end up helping us market our region, and not only from a destination but from a business and investment point of view. That at the end of the day, through events, which is a very, very important part of our economy going forward, it is the events that also play or take that lead in branding our region, but in also helping us reduce that very, very high unemployment rate that we have. That is actually the reason that I go grey, and Solly sitting here, the head of economic development and tourism, is also starting to go grey, because that's the real conundrum that we get faced with every single day, is how do we reduce those big risk issues in our ecosystem. And so it is through a multi-pronged approach, but of course events being one of those approaches. Events are really, really important to us, and thank you very much for all giving up your time. I hope there's going to be some really fruitful discussions, and at the end of the day we can come up with some good decisions and good pathways sketched forward that actually help us become more efficient, more resilient, and more effective as an events destination in the Western Cape.